Good morning and welcome to the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap, episode 85. Can you believe we've done that many?
Can you believe people have put up with us for that long? 85 episodes of us talking shit.
Yes. Now, you must be slightly smug this morning, Graham. The Greens in trouble again?
Oh, you know what? I haven't watched the news apart from the case with Golriz yesterday. I think so no, enlighten me because I've been in a news vacuum this morning.
So one of their newer MPs is in trouble because her husband's business that she has been involved with has allegations of basically abusive of immigrant workers, essentially. Now, why are we talking about that on here? So this is Darlene Tana. Now, her husband and her up until 2019, so interesting structures floating around all over the place, own a company that sells e-bikes in Newmarket and on, I believe, Waiheke Island, which is where Darlene is based. Now, they are dealers, essentially, in that they've had the e-bikes, but also they have sold new road registerable electric scooters under the Nui brand. I don't believe they are an official dealer at the moment. They've certainly sold plenty of them in the past, and they have them listed for sale on the website at the moment. So I'm not sure if not being a dealer is a very, very recent thing, or if it's something that's been around. It happened a while ago. I suspect it happened a wee while ago. But yeah, not a good look.
No, not really. And let's be honest, it hasn't exactly been a banner start to 2024 for the Greens in general, has it really? But in saying that, you know, this is politics, and no matter which side of the spectrum you sit on, sometimes bad stuff happens and you can vet people all you like. And we've seen that across all the political parties. Sometimes things go wrong. So I'm not going to sit here smugly.
Bed legs.
We all know.
Bed legs. There's a difference between a teenage thing and a Green Party MP being tied to a business that's misusing immigrants.
Or nicking $6,000 worth of stuff on the fly.
Yes, well, the interesting thing about that one, and we're totally off topic now, but I love this politics sometimes, is there's this whole thing around another Green Party person, not service an MP or not, taking the items back. Which means that more than one person in the party knew.
I did read that bit. Yes.
Yeah. Now I don't believe some people from nefarious corners floating the idea that it's a certain other Auckland MP. I think that's BS. But interesting.
Well, you know, watch the space, as they say. We in New Zealand appear to love a good dig these days, don't we? At any rate, welcome everybody to the news.
Yes. Well, no, we're still going to wait for the news. Now, I found your doppelganger.
Oh, no. I thought one was bad enough. You warned me about this. I couldn't watch it online, but I'm like, oh.
Yes, I found your doppelganger. This guy looks a heck of a lot like you, but different accent. He has virtually very similar glasses as well. And he has a fantastic dealer story. Now, this is going to take about a minute, I think. But it's a bit of fun. So let's, you'd have to tell me if you can hear the audio on this. I'm hoping everyone else can.
All right.
Leases up. So I had it all nicely clean.
Now, that is you.
Not going to believe what's just happened to me. I've had a Gen Z experience to trump all Gen Z experiences, okay? I took my Jeep.
It gets
to
better,
the
Graham.
dealer where I bought the dealership where I bought it or leased it in the first place. Because the lease.
Am I right? He looks like you, right?
All nicely cleaned, and they said, well, you know, you've got to return it next week. I want to assess whether I've fucked it up or the mileage, and made it look brand new. Looks gorgeous. I packed it Jeep. I got there. There's nowhere to park. There's nowhere to park in customer parking. And there's nice chaps, so just bring it up.
This is also a story that
Jeep. Just bring it up. So
is a classic
side by side with all the
dealer story, and slightly aligned with your Ford story.
I had a meeting with a chap called Graham. Graham, who I would normally call Graham, but for the purpose of you Americans, I'm going to call him Graham. And we'd spoken on the phone, and I'd said, it's Luke, and here's my details, and I'd like to come in and see about, can I buy out my car, like buy out the lease, or can I speak to you about some new leases? So anyway, I said,
it's very handy.
And he said, yes. I said, it's Luke. He said, hi, can I help you? I said, we spoke on the phone. He said, we did? I said, yes, we did. And he said, okay, how can I help you? I said, well, it's me. You said to come in at 2:30. It's 2:30. And I wanted to talk to you about either buying out the lease on my old car or what else is out there. He said, okay, so you'd like to buy a new car today? That's not what I said, is it, Graham, at all? Now I'm realising, just with the speed with which Graham is moving, that Graham is stoned. He's stoned, hands down. 22, 23 years old, got a big old baggy suit, looks like it's the only suit he's ever owned in all of his life, and he is stoned. Anyway, so I said, look, what are my options? I want to talk about the price of my existing car, and I want to talk about my lease options. Like, what's new? He said, well, we got a whole load of nice new Jeeps. I said, well, I would imagine you do, Graham, because we're in a Jeep dealership here, aren't we? Anyway, his boss, big guy, looked over and he's like, everything okay over there, Graham? And I kind of looked over at the guys to say, help me, help, Graham's stoned. Anyway, the guy kind of took the bait. He got it. He looked at me as if to say, Graham's a moron, actually. So I'm going to come and help you out. So he said, what are you looking for? I said, look, here, I'm just going to tell you the whole thing all over again. But really, what's in your inventory? What's nice? What can I afford? What can I afford? He said, have you thought about the new 4xe, the electric Jeep? And I said, that sounds fucking great, that does. And he said, Graham? And Graham said, yes. And he said, go show Luke some of the new 4xe Jeeps in the courtyard. So off I went, following Graham at an extremely slow pace, I might add. So we get to the outdoor courtyard with all the beautiful, glistening Jeeps. Graham says to me, what about this one?
Touch this pace a lot.
And I look at it and I say, that's not a 4xe, Graham. That is a Sahara. I don't work here. I can tell you that. And then he looks at another one and he goes, like this one, like the colour of this one. Not a 4xe, Graham. It's written on the back. Okay, it's written on the back. 4xe. Let's find those ones. Should we find the 4xes? So he's walking around like it's the very, 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 very first time he's ever seen any of these cars. Eventually he spots one and it's like he's found an egg in an Easter egg. He goes, oh, here's one. Here's one. He was so happy. Very nice car. I said, have you got any other colours? And he walked around and he pointed at a dark green one. He said, let's check. Yep, 4xe. Yep, this one. This is this one. I said, that is that one. Yeah, I had a look around. And then he goes, and this one's a Rubicon. This one's a Rubicon here, dark grey. So I said, that's nice, isn't it? That's nice. And I went up to it. And he said, what, you like this one? Should we get some pricing on this one? I said, yeah, we should get some pricing on this one. What sort of thing was it go for? He said, well, let's take the stock number and we can head on inside and we can see what it's like. And I said, Graham? He said, yeah. I said, this is my car. You're trying to sell me my car that I drove here in, Graham. It's a Rubicon, it's not a 4xe, and it's my car. You're trying to sell me my own car, Graham. I went back inside. And I said, George, to the main guy. He said, yeah. I said, I can't with Graham. Okay?
This guy is so English.
I'm going backwards. My life is in reverse when I'm with Graham. I need to move forwards in my life. Help me. Anyway, he showed me some nice inventory, and I might be getting an electric one. He told Graham to go away, and I felt a bit bad, but Graham slothed up next to me and sat down while we were talking paperwork, and he said, Graham, we're done here. We're good. We're good, Graham. Graham.
Thoughts?
You know what? I'm going to say that's happened, Graham. Well, first of all, I know from experience in America that Americans have a lot of trouble pronouncing my name. You know, the worst thing you ever do is go to Starbucks because they can never, ever, ever write your name on the cup. Ever. Doesn't happen.
That's right, Graham.
And the second thing is that there's a few dealerships right now, maybe not the ones that watch this show, okay, because they're all good, but the people that don't watch this show, might be some managers right now going,
they've got to go
around their staff and going, yeah, I don't think he's immune.
Well, let's. This is going to be really delicate here, but let's face it. There probably was a period of New Zealand history about the same time as a certain show called Sports Cafe, where there probably were a few members of the sales teams on the floors of Auckland that may have been using certain things that certain members of that TV show may have been using ish. Allegedly.
Allegedly. So you've heard, well, you think back to the stories of the good old, the 80s. I think we both missed out on great times in the 80s, depending on what your view of a great time is. Fun fact story, an ex-girlfriend of mine many years ago used to be a part-time cleaner at a very well-known Auckland hotel institution in Parnell that is now sadly demised at the end of the peninsula. It might have had White Heron in its name. And the story she told of the things she found from the car dealer set turning up there on early Fridays for drinky sessions and everything else, sessions and bits and pieces. We missed out. We actually missed out.
Oh,
but I'm also going to say that in no way does this reflect upon the used vehicle or new vehicle trade today, but I wouldn't mind betting there's a few people right now a bit nervous watching that.
Yes. I was reading some allegations the other day, but yeah. Anyway. In
any industry, you're going to find
exists
morons.
in any industry. Industry. Yes.
Yep.
But it is there. Now, let's
so there's your
move.
Friday start.
Yeah, that was the most off-topic, random. Am I going to get cancelled? Start of the show ever, pretty much.
I'm going to get your hairstyle tomorrow too.
You are. Yeah, you're going to go get hair. Like, take that picture into the hairdresser and get them to do it for you.
Yes, I will.
Now, let's move on. Now, two things. One, don't forget to go to autotalk.co.nz/live to buy your tickets for AutoTalk Live. We are well past halfway sold now, and we are announcing 3 more speakers today on the AutoTalk magazine, which is out today. Really good magazine coming out this time, as it always is. So yeah, go and get those soon because we don't want people to miss out, particularly if you're after tables. If you're after a theatre seat, not so bad. If you're after a table, there's a real chance that we're going to sell out of those really soon, and we're 2 months away from that show. So just don't dilly-dally. In fact, I'm going to do something after the show at 11 a.m. I'm going to put 2 discount codes online for 10% off. No, we'll make it 15% off a theatre ticket or a table, but I'm only going to do it for 1, right? So if you go and get that 15% off on a table, then that is a good, God, crikey. That's near $300 odd saved. So I'm going to do that. Yep, I'm going to do that so it can be done once for each type of ticket. Once it's done, the code will no longer work anymore. So go and do that, code wrap, and we'll see you on May 7. And secondly, the magazine's out today. A lot of cool stuff. We've got some really cool information from the minister and more on the stories we've got here. And a really great discussion we had with Rod Milner, who is finally looking at, he hasn't entirely done it, but looking at retiring.
Yeah, are you sure, Rod?
Now, I'm not guaranteeing that he's actually going to completely do it, but that's what he's saying. He wants to go and build a really, really nice equestrian centre, and I can see the time. It is the time for it. I mean, you read the article obviously, but he had this amazing career in the import trade, so much news, so much history, so much there at the foundation of things like VIA and so forth. And he achieved that. He moved on to kind of like his next step. They built Milner Mobility. That place, if you haven't had a chance to go through, have a walk through and have a coffee with Rod or Darren or Ewan Philpott, who are there now, amazing facility. They are just doing so well in that trade and helping so many people. And that's kind of up and running and successful. So I guess he's kind of achieved those 2 big things, kind of 2 big phases of his, he's had 3 phases of his career, really. I mean, he was there building CKD Subarus in Waitara many years ago. Really cool career. And I think he deserves a next phase. So go read that when the magazine comes out today. If you're not a subscriber, then just go subscribe on autotalk.co.nz. It's free for the digital version and but a few pennies for the paper version. That's a really good one coming out today.
Yep. going to say just
something
quickly, for those of you who are not involved in the trade on a day-to-day basis, this is what particularly in Wellington, ROD is the equivalent of automotive royalty, particularly in the used import trade. But I think even back his career with NZMC back in the old days, there's a great photo of Rod demonstrating like an Austin Maxi or something, or a Princess to a hapless customer in one of those big glossy NZMC brochures he's put up. He is royalty, and if anybody deserves a bit of time off now, it'd be Rod. But he's got some just amazing stories. If you ever get a chance to sit down and talk to him, he's one of those people that is just, he's lived everything.
Half of them I couldn't publish because I don't have the ability to pay for a lawyer that Rod like Rod does. But to be honest, he probably could have retired 20 years ago if he'd stopped fighting legal battles on behalf of the broader trade. You know, he spent a lot of money fighting, particularly things around the things like odometer tampering. Paved the way. Right, 16 minutes in, and we're finally getting into the news now. Lower EV RUC rate suggested in automotive submission. So this is in regards to the very, very, very short notice and very, very, very short RUC consultation period last week in regards to electric vehicles. All the industry organizations, so if I'll list them off, they MIA, VIA, Motor Trade Association, Automobile Association, Drive Electric, Vehicle Testing New Zealand Trust, and I think the Better NZ Trust as well. They all got together on one big submission, and basically they're saying that the RUC rate is too damn high, as that meme goes. So they have suggested rates of $60 per 1,000 kilometers and $42 per 1,000 kilometers, and they have some justification to it. And I'm going to butcher explaining this, but basically, back in the day when RUC was set, it was all based around diesels using X amount and petrol using X amount, and there was an understanding that essentially it was set around those two types of vehicles using a certain amount of fuel. Now, in that time, the amount of fuel that a diesel uses has remained pretty static, if not anything gone up a little. The amount of fuel that a petrol uses has halved. And what they're suggesting is you need to compare because not all cars are the same, you need to compare the electric vehicles to the petrol cars, not to the diesel vehicles, to get equity or smooth running or not penalize those vehicles as part of that process. Now, again, that arguably goes back to that arguably potentially goes back to the thing that killed small diesel vehicles in New Zealand, that RUC inequity as well. But that boat's already kind of sailed. And I guess what they're saying is we don't want to do the same thing to small electric cars, because we've got precedent there that's setting that too high for vehicles, for light vehicles. Just doesn't work. $60 for electric vehicles, $42 for plug-in hybrid vehicles. That is their hope as a kind of halfway point. Again, a lot of this comes back to the fact that, we had the minister come out really hot and heavy about RUC for all, RUC for all. The reason why this is unfair is because it's not going to be unfair for long, so we're going to have RUC for all. And now we're hearing and we're waiting for more confirmation from the minister that RUC for all is not happening as fast as they would have thought. And some early comments we've indicated it leaves us to believe it won't happen in this term of government. Which is
right?
Yeah. I guess
you and I had opposing views on this on the show, might I add, where I've maintained all the way through that I don't believe RUC for all is going to be anytime soon, and I think you were fairly certain that the minister made it very clear that it was a 12-month project. It might still be, who knows?
And I stand by those early those comments that I made, and I believe that he has been advised that what he's saying is wrong, perhaps by officials. I actually believe that the officials might be a little bit wrong. I think there's this expectation that these systems need to be perfect, and the reality is they aren't going to be. And you're talking about them wanting something to be perfect that already covers 30-40% of the market while not being perfect, and they want to extend it to another portion of the market while not being perfect. So if it's okay to be not perfect for those people, why can't it be not perfect for all? And that's,
I think one of the risks of this, Richard, is that it becomes, be careful it doesn't seem like the electric vehicle community, particularly those with a financial angle to play, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, that if you've got a financial business around EVs, were the first to the table to the minister saying this is unfair because you see it as being a hindrance towards the sale of said EVs or EV products. But I haven't really got so much of an opinion, but around plug-in hybrids, I do. And I think that the rate that plug-ins are being charged is actually unfair when you consider, and I use that word like everything's unfair, but I think plug-ins, the average plug-in, the range as an electric vehicle is minimal by comparison. And the ratio, I think, is completely in the wrong direction. I mean, right now, it has absolutely killed the sales of plug-ins. Why would you bother? In actual fact, a plug-in at the present point in time, the average plug-in is actually less of an economic opportunity to purchase than a regular ICE vehicle of the same size, make, and model. It doesn't make any sense at all. So that, I think, that aspect, the trade would be united in suggesting they've got that wrong. The ratio or the rate on electric vehicles, I'm not so sure. And again, just be careful of the whole commercial angle versus what is actually required to top up the road, the fuel excise tax that's not being recovered.
Yeah. Look, we know that what they are proposing is, and smarter people than I have said this, and smarter people than some, what they're proposing is grossly unfair in regards to what those EVs should be putting into the pot. That's the reality. And we've got to look at who's behind this. There's half a dozen industry associations, including the MTA, the MTA around electric vehicles and around the costings of them have been quite blunt. I suspect they've got some broader intent around that. And even they're on board with this. So it's it's an interesting situation. As I've said 100 times before, I think any EV owner, or very few EV owners, are suggesting that we shouldn't be paying road user charges. I always expected to pay road user charges, and I believe there's value to paying road user charges. The aspect that we're talking about here really is that the rate should be fair, and even not beyond. There was a lot of discussion about the new rate disincentivizes electric vehicles. And yep, that's an aspect. You shouldn't be disincentivizing electric vehicles. They should be paying a fair rate. And yeah, I was slightly concerned. I spent a lot of time watching the consultation period, the live select committee consultation in Parliament. And Grant McCallum, my local MP up here in Northland, kind of implied that these EVs should be doing this because they had to pay the ute tax as such. On vehicles, and this is he didn't use quite these words, but almost like this is payback time. That's not how tax works. That's not how policy works. Anyone who's sitting here thinking these EVs have had a free ride for too long and that they had all these funds thrown at them, blah blah blah, that's not how any of this works, and it's not even part of the argument. And it concerned me that an MP, now I'll give him this credit, he's a very new MP, would even suggest that kind of angle to things. There's plenty of people out there with EVs who bought them before the subsidy, and even then, even those who did, that's not their choice. It wasn't their. They happened to buy the car that was there. They took it. Blah blah blah. In the same way that I don't think you should criticize landlords for taking up tax incentives offered to them by the government, even if that is, some would argue, not necessarily in the right interests of the population. So.
It's a question of cultures. It is. It's exactly it, Richard. What you're talking about is political optics, and might argue that Northland's a pretty, what I'd say is a blue-oriented seat, and it usually has been. And so, talking to his constituents, particularly rural constituents in Northland, it doesn't matter what the real argument is that you and I understand. Optically speaking, people see also the ute tax as a tax that they were going to give to the dirty old owners of EVs to go and prop up their Remura coffee and buy themselves a new Leaf or a new BMW electric thing that they couldn't have access to and wouldn't work in Northland, but they had to pay for anyway. It doesn't matter that was completely wrong. It's the optics of it that sells, and it sells MPs, and it sells and it wins elections. We saw that in the last election. It was a hot button topic. Perhaps we're just in that mode at the moment where there's a little bit too much attention paid to what things look like as opposed to the reality of how they fundamentally work.
That is not the fault. It's not the fault of the people who took it up. And that's where you've got to be careful about where these comments cross the line. It's not fair to punish people who took something up. That's just the reality. in the same way as I said that you shouldn't punish or people shouldn't give crap to landlords because they're now able to claim back their interest. That's the government decision. It's not the decision of the people that've done it, and if it's there, take it. That's my position on those things.
Some people are stupid.
Some
people, just truth, right? It is just some people that we can't help them, unfortunately.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So let's be interesting to see. We will know hopefully really quickly what the outcome is, because we're 2 weeks from Ruck coming in. The thing I personally think needs to be looked at is we're arguing over here over the 15 cents, blah blah blah, or $15, whatever it is. $14 to print a frickin' Ruck label. Under what justification is that remotely okay? Why does it cost $14 to print a Ruck label?
Well, actually, I'm surprised this didn't get redone. NZTA had a complete revision of all its service charges, as you know, last year. And that was one of the few that appeared to escape relatively untouched. We've had effectively now
because they know it's
change of ownership services.
Because they know it's too much.
So, in everything else that got modified, and some charges were modified considerably up and down. It wasn't just a little bit of a linear line. Why wasn't the Ruck one addressed at that same time? Now it just looks silly. But you're right, it's been way too much across, not just EVs. Every purchaser of road user label these days. When
there must be a minimal if you use one of the e-Ruck systems, I believe the transaction price when you purchase new Ruck through those e-Ruck systems is $4. So where's that extra $10 going? That's if my New Zealand postal outlet's getting $10 every time they go and print a label for that's a rip. That's an absolute rip off. So
interesting to see. The service agents that are providing this, are they squealing right now about the extra cost or not, Richard?
No, probably not. Probably.
There you
not.
go.
Yeah,
it looks like a duck.
Yes. Right. Now on some nicer news. We've got a lot of people moving around this week. It seems to be the time for it. Now, fourth generation Hutchinson becomes Colonial Dealer Principal. The Colonial Motor Company appointed Nick Hutchinson as the new dealer principal of its subsidiary Ford and Mazda franchise, Timaru Motors, on March 1. His appointment in Timaru brings the family story to a full circle where it began with the Colonial Motor Company in 1920. He is the fourth generation Hutchinson to be appointed the head of a Colonial Motor Company subsidiary, following the career path of his father John, grandfather Ormond Alexander, or Hutch, and great-grandfather Ormond, a.k.a. the Chief. I love that we included those in there. Nick began his career at the Colonial Motor Co. when he joined Team Hutchinson Ford as a marketing assistant in 2015. His father, John Hutchinson, joined the Team Hutchinson Ford in vehicle sales in 1993 and became the dealer principal in 2006. His father joined Hutchinson Motors as an assistant accountant in 1953 and was the dealer principal from 1973 to 1990. Hutch served 37 years with the Colonial Motor Company and was the board chair when he passed away in 2000. And then his father was the first member of the family to join the Colonial Motor Company in 1920. He was sent to Timaru to become the first road organizer, dealer development manager in New Zealand. This role involved visiting Ford dealers from Kaikoura to Makago to help them maximize their Ford tractors, trucks, and car sales. Just amazing amount of history there. And
that's a cool story.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Nick ends up on the board of Colonial somewhere at some point. So and I guess to note, I mean, look, these guys aren't the Gibbons family. They're not the kind of main family, but they've almost got more history in it now than the Gibbons do. So look, good on them. That's just amazing as far as I'm concerned. Really cool story. Now, more from the Ford stable, and I'm not sure we got into this in the last issue. So I've chucked in there. You can tell me within a second if I've overlapped something. Simon Rutherford is off. He is leaving Ford New Zealand. He is currently the president of the Motor Industry Association as well. Rutherford's been with Ford since 2016, which makes him pretty darn long running for a Ford New Zealand managing director. Normally, after 3 or 4 years, they're given their plane ticket off to somewhere more exotic.
Yep.
For positive reasons. His new post does not be confirmed. Ford spokesman Tom Clancy noted Rutherford's achievements since his appointment as managing director of Ford New Zealand in 2016. He's guided the New Zealand business to record sales levels, including light commercial segment leadership and ongoing overall Ford Ranger market leadership. He's going to be there in the short term while the handover, and we've reached out to the MIA to find out what's going on with their appointment of our new president. Though I guess until Rutherford is gone, that's not necessarily that urgent. Simon Bridges appointed NZTA chair, former Transport Minister and Chief Executive of the Auckland Business Chamber. Simon Bridges has been appointed as the new board chair of the New Zealand Transport Agency for a 3-year term. Simeon Brown announced the appointment on Monday and says Bridges brings extensive experience and knowledge in transport policy and governance to the role. He has a strong focus on delivering outcomes and ensure the NZTA is working to implement the government policy statement on land transport. He's been with the Auckland Business Chamber since 2022, also has a podcast on stuff. I would question whether he can keep both those roles in the long term. Could there be some questions around whether being the chair of the NZTA, which spends an awful lot of money of benefit to the Auckland business community, remain the head of the business chamber?
That's something that he'll obviously need to work through. But just, look, I'm sure there's going to be people on the left side of the spectrum screaming that it's jobs for the boys. And let's face it, governments appoint from their own. That's one of the delights of, it's a bit like being the US president. You get just appoint attendees to the Supreme Court and everyone gets upset every single time. And that's the job, one of the great jobs of being president. Same case here. So I think if you take us to the politics, Bridges is probably quite a good choice for that particular role. He does have extensive experience in the transport portfolios across a number of years, and you'd have to argue he wasn't a bad transport minister. And if you're sitting particularly in the EV sector right now, you can thank a lot of the initiatives that you are enjoying today from the drive that Bridges had towards an electrified fleet back in the early 2010s. So he's forward-thinking. He clearly has the ability to communicate with a lot of different people, a lot of far-reaching contacts across the wide trade. May not be a bad choice going forward. And NZTA desperately needs that strong direction to move itself forward in these particular times we're in.
I know one choice that would have been better. Stephen Joyce. Bring back Joyce.
Oh, I know. That's just like, he just teases, Richard. He teases that. It was funny. I got a little anecdote to that one. There was a story, it was a comment that Stephen Joyce made about the current situation with, I think, News Hub. And Stephen Joyce made a comment. And you always read the comments in the articles, they're often hilarious. And some, warrior from the left had waited and said, "Oh, Stephen Joyce, what would he know about media?"
Yeah.
Well, actually, you might want to ask him that question. So, yeah, the ministry of everything, we miss him so.
Well, I believe his former business that he sold to the company that then split off TV3/News Hub isn't doing that well at the moment. So I'm not sure on that one. Did well at the time.
I didn't say, was it doing well at the time, Richard? Was it doing well at the time?
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly.
So Simon Bridges, of course, he opened the last AutoTalk Live, so he's going to be the new chair of the NZTA. And another old face moving on, Wal Dumper is leaving Inchcape, or probably previously known as Subaru New Zealand. He's been replaced by Kim Mello. You'll see this. So after 24 years with the business, Inchcape New Zealand and Subaru New Zealand Managing Director Wallace Dumper is elected to take voluntary redundancy and will step down from the two executive roles in 2015. I believe that's 24 years, but not consecutive. There was a gap in between. Dumper was appointed to the role of Inchcape New Zealand Subaru Managing Director in July 2023, assuming responsibility for the market's expanded operations following Inchcape's entrance into retail and appointment as the importer and distribution of LEV and SsangYong vehicles in the New Zealand market. Before this, Dumper held the position of Subaru New Zealand Managing Director since 2010, having previously been the business leader between 1996 and 2006. So he had a bit of a brief trip off to, I think, Blue Wing and Motor Corp in the middle there. After more than 2 decades, after more than 2 decades in senior leadership positions within the business, and while contemplating the possibility of retirement, I've decided that now is the opportune moment to step aside and accept voluntary redundancy. It's time to pass the torch to a new leadership as they pave the way for the next chapter. So Mello has joined Inchcape in 2023 as Bravo Auto franchise director and has supported Inchcape's broader retail operations as head of sales in Melbourne. With 20 years of experience in the automotive industry, Mello commenced his career as a graduate, enabling him to build a strong foundation and understanding of the retail environment. He spent 17 years at Mazda Australia, including as an executive team member for 13 years. So he's pretty on to be here. Tim Barnes-Lawton has been appointed Subaru New Zealand General Manager, and Penny Thornbury, National Sales Manager for KGM, and Jeff Phillips, National Sales Manager, LDV. Bit of a shuffle around there. So that's that one. Have you had much to do with Wall in the past?
No, but I think he was one of the early adopters when it came to this about with the old grey imports argument. In the days when you couldn't so much as dare put an Impreza across the forecourt at a Subaru dealer, a grey import, a used import, for fear of having you supposedly your franchise stripped from you. And as I recall, he was one of the earlier franchise leaders to turn around and say, you know what, rather than give these things the bum's rush, why don't we not only accept them into the fold, but we'll stock the parts and service and bits and pieces and make some coin on the way. And we might even bring some of these in ourselves. And so I think he was one of the earlier ones to actually accept that imports were here to stay, having done a complete U-turn from their previous position, which is basically the devil's spawn, if you so much as put a wheel across the forecourt. But yeah, again, long-standing name in the industry. Everybody surely knows who Wally Dumper is. And that's, I think, a good legacy to have when you think about somebody in those sort of terms.
Yes. Right, Turner's officially opened Timaru site. We've spoken about the Timaru site a few times before, but they've officially opened their new $4 million branch in Timaru, making it the dealership's 21st car branch across the country. Located at the corner of Meadows Road and Stato 1 in Washdyke, the branch started trading in November, but had its first ribbon cutting ceremony on March 9. Chief Executive Greg Hedgepeth says the decision to move to the area was made a couple of years ago after analysis showing growth potential in the South Canterbury region. 100 cars, it's got a building. How that's $4 million, I'm not sure, but I guess that's the cost of building stuff these days. MG Motor ANZ strengthens executive team for growth. MG Motors Australia and New Zealand recently appointed a suite of strategic staff and key management positions to prepare for an electrified future in both markets. Oh, that's pretty cheesy. Yeah. Mark Roberts
that's a press release you're reading there, Richard, isn't it? That's
Robert, rewrite your bloody press releases. Mark Roberts was appointed Head of Human Resources for MG Motor Australia and New Zealand 23. He was previously Chief People Officer, and Kenneth Liu took over the Head of After Sales for MG Motor Australia and New Zealand. David Giametta was appointed as PR and Communications Manager for MG Australia and New Zealand. These have been around for a few while. Anyway, let's move on. A Motor JQ launch delayed. Dunedin dealer appointed. A Motor JQ New Zealand's committed will officially launch in April rather than March, as previously advised, and it has appointed a dealer in Dunedin. Southern Motor Group has been appointed as Dunedin's A Motor JQ dealer. The Motor and JQ brands will release 8 models in New Zealand over the next 2 years. The partnership with Southern Motor Group marks a significant milestone in A Motor JQ's expansion efforts as it works towards providing more accessibility for customers nationwide. I'm going to China with a motor into the Beijing Motor Show in April. Going up with a bunch of dealers, going to look around. I guess I'll ask them how they're all feeling about this. Interesting brand coming through. Yeah, it's definitely not the Cherry that we've seen before.
Well, that's not a bad thing, just saying, Richard.
It's interesting. I read through a summary by a Chinese industry insider the other day that kind of ran through what the various brands they were the Chinese market was starting to export and what their take on them was within the Chinese market. Mm-hmm. And the Cherry and a Motor stuff these days was seen as some of the best built in China. They apparently now their build quality is in China considered very solid. They're not considered particularly exciting cars or anything like that, but they now believe they kind of build a very good value, well built car. It was interesting. Some of the comments there about other stuff was felt that MG wasn't particularly well liked or known within China, which is not surprising. It's an export brand. BYD was considered very good in technology, but perhaps a bit funny on build. A few other interesting takes. I might see if I can share that maybe next week.
Mm.
We'll run through it as an interesting take on the market. Yeah, you guys ever considered taking on a Chinese brand as like shift to the new space, Graham?
Well, many years ago, and I'm talking now decades and decades ago, we had a sniff of the Kia brand. Would you believe somebody that we know or used to know in the industry came to us and said, "We've got this Korean badge looking for a bit of a home around local. I'd say be interested in this Kia thing that we've got a couple of." And we sort of looked at it and kicked the tires and in classic fashion said, that'll never sell. But I got some great Primeras over here. So for our people, I suppose, we are definitely used vehicle people in the best possible way. And I think sometimes you've got to have a particular set of talents to cross the bridge into new. And there's been some used vehicle dealers that have done really well by doing so.
You say that, Graham, but how many New Zealand new cars are parked in your staff car park?
Right now, probably 2.
There's at least 3.
Oh, okay. You can count my nasty old TIG one, but that's just here because I haven't broken it yet.
What about the Mustang?
It's at home in the garage. You asked how many are parked here right now.
Right. Look, how many of your staff or how many of the team there, the senior team there, drive New Zealand new cars?
3 or 4. 3 or 4.
Just saying. I remember every time I fricking go to a meeting of used import industry people, the car park is not full of imports. It's full of Mercedes, and you previously ate a few HSVs and Land Rovers and Range Rovers, and
well, you can't get HSVs in Japan, can you? Right, and you can't get Mustangs in Japan either, can you? So
just
taste.
Just saying.
For the record, for the show, I'd actually. One of my things one day I'd like to actually do is get involved in the new vehicle sector. I think it'd be really exciting. And I'm sort of keeping one of those little, watching beady eyes in case there's bits and pieces floating out there that the industry might see as a fit. Because it's the one thing I've never actually done. And I'm quite excited about new product coming on through too. I really love what I do. But, I think a lot of dealers, we're car people, and there's just because you deal in used vehicles from Japan does not mean to say you can't cast your eye over the hedge and see what else is there. And we have plenty, dare I say, of new vehicle people that come in and fawn over all the cool toys that we have as well. So I think we like to mix paddocks a lot more than you might think.
Yes.
Well, that we don't.
The head of the biggest used car dealer in the country came from New Vehicle Land, Greg Hedgepeth. He was at a BMW. He's now running Turner's retail.
Ask David Crawford what we helped him buy. Watch
out, he'll talk about his Skyline all day long, and it was his second, or at least second.
Exactly. Yep.
Yes.
So there you are.
I was a long-term used import car person, but no, I have New Zealand Air on the driveway at the moment. But yeah.
That's because we're not importing used EVs of the sort of nature that you like, Richard. If we did, I'm sure we could sort of push a couple of your way as well. It's all about, often it's just about accessibility to the vehicle.
You know what you could push my way, and I would actually like, and you may have differing opinions on them, but the history is on my side. First generation Kia Sportages.
We can't get those used.
I know, but they if you ever run across one, they've got a bit of a cult following now. They prove to be reasonably solidly built, an old school but workable Mazda donk under the bonnet. I mean, literally, pretty much an old cast iron Mazda engine, I think, isn't under the bonnet of those. Pretty durable 4x4 underpinnings, sure. State of the horse cart technology, but yeah. It's
you say cult like there's more than one of you, Richard. Just because you
no. They're out there. One of the funny stories I had about that car.
Not the places I see.
Yes, one of the stories I had about that car was a motoring rider driving into a field and sinking one to their belly, which when they got their hands on it, and having fun getting out. But when I was speaking to someone years ago, back when they switched from the original one, which had the tire on the back, and then they shifted to that one that had the longer boot on it, and they took the tire off the back. And apparently that was a massive fail for them. It was I think the one with the longer back. It looked great, nice and balanced, had a lot more space, blah, 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 blah. But apparently one of their core buyer markets was drivers who liked having the tire on the back. Because in the days before parking cameras were common, because they could back into things with the tire. They could bump park with the tire on the back of the car. And apparently that was considered a bit of an issue for the New Zealand market when they switched to the longer one. So yeah, interesting.
Like I said, it's a cult, Richard. I'm just not sure how many other members you have in it.
I live by a giant sand flat that would be amazing for cruising around on one of those old Sportages. They are off-road weapons. Now,
speaking of vehicles and tires, just a top tip for you that's been all over social media in the last couple of days. If anybody wanders up to you with a very nice little 2001 through 2003 silver Corolla, Arunx or Alex 5-door hatchback that looks suspiciously clean, look again. There's been one stuck on the beach out at Karitaki for a couple of nights that I hear that just managed to extract out of the sand. And it's all good.
$1 on Trade Me.
Coming soon to a trade-in near you. Watch out.
Now, the next one we have here, we won't go too much into the detail of this, but there is a slight fight going on in Australia.
Oh, yes. This is handbags at dawn. It really is. It's almost fun to watch.
I sent someone senior within the trade the other day that GIF, that meme that goes around of Michael Jackson sitting there shoveling popcorn watching, because that's the kind of position New Zealand's in at the moment. These guys are falling apart over there over the government proposing a watered down version already of New Zealand's clean car standard. And they are freaking out to the point now that Polestar and Tesla have quit the FCAI, their version of the MIA. Volkswagen Group Australia has left the policy group within the FCAI. There's all sorts of debate over there. Hyundai is for it, Twitter's against it. In the middle somewhere. It's interesting, and I think what some of the problems come down to is that a lot of the messaging from the FCI and some of these companies that are very much against it has gone to the absolute extreme of possibilities of what this could do. You know, every Land Cruiser is going to have a $15,000 fee attached to it.
No, the billboards. We were over there a couple of weeks ago. Elbows in its charge you $15,000 for your Ranger.
It's an absolute misunderstanding of how the system works. And sure, if the only thing that Toyota Australia sold was 100,000 Land Cruiser 200s a year, and they never advanced the technology, and they that's all they sell, and that's 2019, and it's at the extreme end of the technology of the scheme, and it's the full fees, then maybe on paper, theoretically, look, those things have kind of made my camera go out. I was so handsy there, Graham. But the reality is that that's not how. Oh God, I got to fix this now. There we go. That is not how any of this works, and that Toyota Australia already sells a crap load of hybrids that will balance out those Land Cruisers. By the time we get to 2019, technology will no doubt have shifted. In fact, it was already predicted prior to this Land Cruiser coming out, there's going to be other technology coming into it with reduced emissions. They've been disingenuous in how they've presented the data to the public, and I think that's why you're seeing Polestar, Tesla, to a lesser extent, the Volkswagen Audi group, or Volkswagen Australia group, I don't know what, VAG, or VGA, or whatever, Volkswagen Group Australia, getting miffed is that there's been a lot of disingenuous marketing around what NEVs, as they call it, actually is. Now, is it too extreme at this point? Probably. But that's how legislation works. You go and push it to the limit, you take it to consultation, you dial it back, you say, see, we listened, we acknowledge you, greenies. And then you end up with a workable system. So, yeah.
I've got a particular opinion on this one with the work that I do with AIMVIA, obviously. And it's first of all that I'm just sitting back like Michael Jackson with popcorn, because FCAI have been an absolute bunch of pricks to the used import industry in Australia. They have been obstructive and obtrusive and blocking and issuance of fairly, again, really hand-wringing media statements about the evils of these terrible used import hybrid and electric cars that could be dared to be brought in from Japan and sully the landscape of fine Australian engineering instead. And they've blocked it every single turn. AIMVIA put together, I thought, a really sensible NEVS strategy that was submitted a couple of years ago now, at least 1.5 years ago, that's now resurfaced as the Albanese government's having a closer look at this thing. And you've got to sit back and think, well, boys, in the FCAI, you get what you deserve and what you reap, because they have been so stridently against anything to do at all with emissions, to the point of blocking any attempt by anybody to have more fuel-efficient vehicles entering the fleet, as we have now. Here we are. It's just desserts. Now, I'm sure it'll work itself out in the end, but it's interesting watching them tear themselves apart limb from limb right now. And I don't see a particular winner in sight for this one, apart from the destruction, if you want, of the long-term relationships that FCR was built on, and a push, if you like, away by some of these members to other organisations, or without that level of representation being required anymore. Because let's face it, if you are a dealer or a distributor of electric vehicles into the Australian marketplace, and you suddenly find that your representative body is controlled by senators from Alice Springs or Broken Hill who can hold sway in the Australian Senate, does it have anything for you?
And the misstep they've got there is that electric vehicles are selling like hotcakes in New Zealand and Australia at the moment. Not New Zealand. New Zealand, I've got a crap ton living here. It's funny how the tide turns. But in Australia, they are selling like hotcakes, just out the door, flying out the door. So they've ended up so out of step with probably some of the profit centers of some of their significant members. So it's such a delicate thing. Now, the other aspect to it too is that I forgot my point there. But anyway, it's a bit crap. Hey, look, they need a system. We've got a system. Oh, sorry, yeah, I was going to think. Was it in what we're not talking about being on the same kind of, Australia being dragged to meet everyone else's emissions levels. They really are being left behind on some stuff, and they really need to sort their mix out. So I was looking at the average amount paid in fuel by Australians to go, what was it, 100 kilometers or something like that. I can't remember. Anyway, the numbers will make sense when I talk about it. Is that the cost it takes to go a certain distance by Australians, or what they're paying for fuel, or what they're paying for energy to go that distance. In the Europe, it was something like, I can't remember. It was like something like $3.50. In America, that same figure goes up to about $4 something. Now that's balanced by fuel cost versus efficient vehicles, blah blah blah. But availability of efficient vehicles in Australia, it's $7. Their cost of their emissions profile is so out of whack that it's crazy. The other interesting thing about it is just how much buy-in they're getting from people who produce media over this stuff. And I'm sorry, this time it's not the mainstream media. The mainstream media in Australia, from what I've seen, even the Murdoch-owned junk, has been running a relatively even bet on this. It's the outside stuff that's been really interesting, watching some of the columnists and some of the, particularly the vloggers on YouTube. We've seen channels pop up in recent weeks. There's this guy, a British guy living in Australia, whose previous videos were about, playing with his old Maserati and stuff like that. Suddenly he's just become this anti-EV blogger bitching about NEVs, built thousands of subscribers, and he's gone from doing like 10 videos over a year to 50 videos in a month, all bitching about random stuff that's taken out of context in regards to electric vehicles. 4x4 24/7, one of the biggest 4x4 shows, YouTube channels in the world. You think they should have some relative intelligence to them and kind of thing. Now, they are against NEVs, obviously, because they all want to buy their big four-wheel drives. Fine. They go through a talk on that. They complain about it. But then they start hauling out absolute bullshit Reddit backpage theories about electric vehicles that just have no grounding. And this is what concerns me, is because the stuff rates and just misinformation is getting out there. And yeah, these days, the independent media is now, I think, at danger these days. It's becoming as bad as the mainstream media, if you want to go down that track. In regards,
did you just say that, Richard?
Out there in the market. Yes, I did.
It's getting hot in here, people. How's your old mate John Cadogan going these days about EVs, by the way?
Yeah, well, he catches it on as much as he can. He sometimes says some nice things. But yeah, look, John Cadogan's a prime example. He was really pro EV and generally wouldn't talk about them until he worked out that you could get 50,000 more views in a video if you shat on EVs. Now, some of the stuff he has some points. I'm not saying EVs are perfect. But yeah, who knows? So
handbags EVs in Australia.
Anyway, EVs aren't perfect, okay? But here's the thing to take into account. Neither are other vehicles. And for every story I hear about X EV shitting a battery at 150,000 kilometers, I hear 5 stories of X Ute shitting an engine at 100,000 kilometers. So let's not forget that nothing is perfect. And it's the pudding route that counts, I believe, is the old line. So, yeah. And you know what I'm talking about there, Graham, when I say those things.
I do. And I'm sort of nodding my head because you actually got a really good point. And don't forget, for a living, I sell hybrid cars, and I get every second person saying, I heard about these bloody hybrid batteries. Our mechanic says these things are 50,000 Ks and they're in the landfill and they're $19,000 to buy a new aqua battery. I don't like those freaking things. So I'm used to it,
What is the price of a new aqua battery lately? Last time I saw it wasn't that bad. Twitter New Zealand were doing them for a pretty good price.
What does anyone buy? I mean, actually, this could be urban myth, of course. Last I heard, on Twitter New Zealand do have 1 or 2 in stock, and they're about between $4,000 and $5,000, but they can't sell them because why are you going to buy one? Because you can buy a used aqua battery, right? If you really want one, you can buy a used one for about $600, and they come with a warranty.
There are plenty of technicians in Auckland that'll take your battery. They'll find the bad cell. They'll swap in a cell from another battery that they're broken down for parts. It's the same with like Nissan Leaf batteries. There's plenty of technicians out there now getting into business, reassembling Nissan Leaf batteries with new or refurbished cells, or getting rid of the bad cells and putting in the new ones. It's why the value of a Nissan Leaf has a floor at the auctions, even a damaged one, because there's a market developing recycling, but not in the traditional sense, chucking through the chipper, recycling them into newer workable batteries. Systems.
It's cheaper to change a battery if you head to in a Toyota hybrid than it is to get a gearbox for an average petrol car. Used, just as
true that.
It just is. So, yep, I know what you mean.
True that. Right, I think that is about. Oh no, one more story. Where are we? Constellation Dealership Group acquires Auto IT. So the Perseus operating group of Constellation Software Inc. has purchased Auto IT Proprietary Limited, a dealer management system provider for franchise automotive, agriculture, trucking, and construction equipment markets. So that's where are they? So basically, it's a UK-based group. Yeah, so Auto IT's got new owners. So they're going to retain their offices in Melbourne, Australia, Wellington, India, and Southeast Asia, and its partners in South Africa and Mexico. Chief Executive Wayne Rushworth, Aaron Newman, Director of Sales and Marketing Aaron Newman, and Director of New Zealand Overseas Affiliates Roger Pevs will continue to lead in their current roles. So, in other words, that DMS that you know and use a lot, and Auto IT is in a lot of dealerships, a lot of new franchise dealerships. It's under new ownerships, but they've left all the existing management there, so you don't have to worry about it. That's the key thing. Same thing as when Motor Central got sold. Same people running the place. Don't panic.
Yeah, no, that's right. Panic. Yeah. Richard, I can hear the door being beaten down by all those people watching right now that want to go and access their code for the dealer presentation coming up.
Yes. So give me 10 minutes, and I will go and pop that in the system. And yeah, don't forget, only one person gets it. So go and do that at about 11:10. This is the problem. We run too long.
We talk too much.
Yes. Anyway, I will let you go, Graham. Go sell some Acquai, and we'll
I'm going to look for some new vehicle franchises to put on the yard tomorrow as well. Applications taken through my front door, bribes happily accepted.
And if anyone wants someone to work in the new car industry, Graham is happy to talk to you.
There we go.